The great auction hall of Viridia stood tall in the center of the city. Its pillars rose like sharp teeth into the sky, polished until they shone in the sun. Inside, rows of beings from many worlds gathered. Some came to trade. Others came to buy servants or workers. Voices filled the space with sharp tones and whispers. The crowd waited for the next one to be presented. Myra stood behind a gate made of steel. Her hands were bound by a light chain, not heavy but enough to remind her of her place. She was a Zelian, a race proud of their beauty and ability to continue their line. For her kind, life was measured by how many children one could bring into the world. Myra could not. She had been tested again and again. The healers had spoken clearly. She was sterile and would never bear life. That single truth had turned her into what her people called useless. She did not feel useless. She could speak 6 languages. She could read the stars and track seasons. She could work long hours without complaint. Yet none of this mattered to the council that ruled her race. The law said those without the gift of life must be given away or sold, so they would not waste the space of the city. That was why she was here now, standing in the cold light of the auction stage. The gate opened. Guards pushed Myra forward into the center platform. Bright lights cut across her face. The crowd leaned in to look at her. Some whispered about her tall figure, her calm eyes, her steady walk. Others turned away and muttered that she was a waste. The auctioneer raised his hand. He was an old alien with a voice like cracked stone. This one is Zelian. Name is Myra. Strong body. Trained in basic work. Cannot bear life. The council has marked her as sterile. Opening bid is 5 credits. Silence followed. Many in the crowd shook their heads. A merchant from the desert clan laughed and said no credit should be wasted. A miner from the mountains said she was better left for the work pits. Even those who had been bidding eagerly on others now folded their arms and stayed quiet. Myra kept her eyes forward. She felt shame trying to press against her chest, but she forced it down. She would not let them see her break. She stood straight and waited, though she feared no one would claim her. Then a voice rose from the back. It was calm, low, and unlike the others. 10 credits. The hall grew still. Heads turned. At the far end stood a tall human man. His clothes were simple, rough from travel. A pack rested on his shoulder, and soil still clung to his boots. Few humans ever came this far to Viridia. Those who did were usually traders or explorers. The auctioneer frowned. 10 credits offered. Any more? No answer came. The merchants did not see value. The miners did not care. The crowd remained silent. The human lifted his hand again. 15 credits. Whispers began to ripple across the seats. Why would a human bid higher for a sterile Zelian? The question passed from row to row. Still no other bid came. The auctioneer raised his hand and spoke loud. 15 credits offered. Going once. Going twice. Sold. The hammer struck the stone. The chain around Myra's wrists was unlocked. The guard stepped aside and handed her to the human. She looked up at him for the first time. His face carried lines from sun and work, but his eyes were steady and kind. He gave a small nod as if to say she did not need to fear. Myra walked beside him as they left the auction hall. The crowd still whispered, confused by the choice. To them, a sterile being was nothing. To the human, it seemed different. Outside the hall, the city buzzed with markets and machines. The human spoke for the first time. My name is Devon. I am a farmer. I need help with land, not children. If you wish, you can come with me. You will work, but you will live free from their judgment. Myra listened. Her heart felt uncertain. She had been told all her life that without children she had no worth. Yet this man, this stranger from another world, spoke as if she could still build something meaningful. She did not know if she could trust his words, but she knew she had no other path left. She nodded slowly. I will come. And with that, her new journey began. The auction that was meant to mark her end had instead opened a door. She did not yet know what kind of life waited on that farm in the wilderness, but for the first time in many years she felt a spark of hope. Devon led Myra away from the noise of the auction hall. The city streets were crowded with stalls, machines, and bright signs in many languages. Merchants called out their prices. Shouts of bargaining mixed with the hum of engines. Myra followed quietly, her steps steady but her thoughts heavy. She was free from the auction, yet she did not know what kind of future she was stepping into. Devon did not speak much as they walked. His eyes moved over the road, watching for carts and workers. He carried himself with calm strength. Myra studied him from the side. His clothing was rough and patched, but clean. His pack was filled with simple tools. He looked different from the polished traders and rich buyers she had seen earlier. He seemed like someone who lived close to the soil, not close to wealth. After some time they reached the outer docks of the city. Small ships rested on platforms, some built for trade, some for travel into the open sky. Devon stopped at a craft that looked old but sturdy. Its wings folded along the sides, and the hull bore marks of many journeys. He opened the hatch and motioned for Myra to step inside. The ship was simple. There were no golden lights or fine seats, only strong metal and tools packed neatly. Myra sat on a bench as Devon prepared the controls. The engines rumbled to life with a low hum. Slowly, the craft lifted from the dock and rose into the air. The city began to shrink beneath them until it became only lines of stone and light. Myra had not left the city in years. She pressed her hand against the window and looked at the open land beyond. Wide fields stretched toward mountains. Rivers cut silver lines across the ground. Patches of forest waved with green. For a moment she forgot her fear and felt her chest lighten. Devon noticed her gaze. It is different out here. The city believes life is only in numbers. The land teaches that life is in growth. You will see. She turned to him and asked carefully, why did you choose me? You could have bought someone else, someone your own people would value. He kept his eyes on the controls but his voice was firm. I did not choose you for what the council rejected. I chose you because I saw strength in you. Farming is not about carrying children. It is about carrying hope. I need hands that will work beside me. That is enough. Myra lowered her eyes. His words were strange to her ears, yet they carried warmth. For the first time, someone had spoken of her worth without pointing to what she lacked. Hours passed as they crossed valleys and plains. The ship finally descended near a wide stretch of land. Devon guided it down onto a flat clearing beside a cluster of stone and wood buildings. Myra stepped outside and felt fresh air brush her face. The city's sharp smoke was gone. Here the air carried the smell of soil and grass. Before her stood fields waiting for seed. Some plots already showed green shoots pushing through the earth. Animals moved slowly inside fenced areas, their cries soft in the evening light. The farm was not grand, but it was alive. Devon set down his pack and spoke with a steady tone. This is my place. It is not much, but it is mine. The soil is good, though it takes care and time. I built these walls myself. The work is hard, but the reward is real. If you wish to stay, you will share in both. Myra walked slowly across the field. She bent down and touched the soil. It felt rich, filled with small roots and tiny creatures moving within. She had studied the cycles of stars and seasons, but she had never worked with earth like this. She felt a strange pull, as if the ground itself whispered that she could still create life in another way. That night Devon showed her the small house he had built. It was plain, with a wooden table, 2 chairs, and shelves filled with seeds and tools. He gave her a room of her own, a simple space with a bed and window. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow you will see how the farm truly lives." As Myra lay down, she thought of the auction hall. There she had been seen as empty. Here, in this quiet farm, she felt the chance to be something more. The silence of the night was deep, broken only by the soft sound of wind moving through the fields. She closed her eyes and held on to the thought that perhaps Devon was right. Life might not be only in what one was born to give. Life might also be in what one chose to build. And in this new place, under strange stars, she would discover if that was true. Morning came with soft light spreading across the fields. Myra woke to the sound of birds calling in the distance. She sat by the window and looked outside. The land stretched wide and open, covered with grass that bent under the wind. It felt different from the stone walls of the city. Here there was space to breathe. Devon was already awake. She found him outside carrying buckets of water to the animals. His movements were steady and practiced. He gave her a small nod when she stepped out. "We begin early." "The land does not wait," he said. Myra followed him to the field. The soil was dark and soft. Rows of young plants pushed through the ground. Devon knelt and showed her how to check the leaves for signs of health. He pressed the soil between his fingers to test its moisture. "The earth speaks if you learn to listen," he explained. "Dry soil tells you it needs water. Yellow leaves tell you the roots lack strength. Farming is not only labor. It is reading the signs of life." Myra listened carefully. She touched the soil and tried to sense what he meant. At first it felt like nothing but dirt, yet as she watched more closely she noticed small insects moving between roots and tiny shoots fighting upward. For the first time she saw the ground not as empty but as a place filled with hidden energy. Devon handed her a small spade. Together they worked through the rows, clearing weeds and planting new seeds. The work was hard and sweat gathered on her skin, but there was rhythm in it. The sound of tools striking soil and the smell of fresh earth gave her a quiet strength. As the sun rose higher, Devon took her to a shaded shed where jars and boxes lined the shelves. Inside were seeds of many kinds. Some were brought from Earth. Others came from nearby traders. Each was labeled with care. Devon held up a small pouch of grain seeds. "These are strong," he said. "But they must be planted with care. Too deep and they will not rise. Too shallow and the sun will burn them. Balance is the key." Myra studied the seeds. They were small, almost weightless, yet they held the power to grow into food for many. She felt a quiet wonder at the thought. Though she could not give life in the way her people demanded, she could place these seeds into the soil and help them grow. That thought gave her courage. Day by day she learned. She learned how to guide water through channels, how to watch the sky for signs of rain, how to protect young plants from insects without harming the soil. Devon showed her tools but also trusted her to try her own ways. She began to experiment, mixing local herbs into the water, finding that it kept certain pests away. She tested the soil with powders she remembered from her studies in the city, learning which areas were richer and which needed care. One evening she found a patch of earth near the edge of the field that seemed lifeless. Plants grew weak there and quickly withered. She studied the soil with careful hands and realized it lacked the small creatures that made the earth strong. With Devon's help she carried rich soil from other fields and spread it across the weak ground. Weeks later the patch turned green again. Devon smiled at her discovery. "You see more than most," he said. Myra felt a warmth inside. For the first time since leaving the city she felt useful. The land responded to her care, and the farm began to thrive. Beyond the fields she also tended to animals. Small creatures with long ears and sharp eyes watched her with caution at first, but as she brought them food and water they grew calm. She learned how to mend fences, how to clean shelters, how to gather eggs from birds without causing them fear. Every task taught her patience. At night she sat outside under the stars. She traced the constellations she had studied long ago. In the city those stars had felt distant and cold. Here, with the soil on her hands and the sound of wind in the grass, they felt closer. She wondered if her life was slowly taking a new shape. One night Devon joined her by the fire. He placed a log into the flames and said, "You are learning fast. The farm is stronger with your hands." Myra looked into the fire. "I did not believe I could be more than what they said. But here I feel I am building something." Devon nodded. "That is the truth of farming. You build with each day. You do not need to be what others demand. The soil does not ask for children. It asks for care." Her chest tightened at those words. For years she had carried the weight of being judged as less than others. Now, in this quiet place, she felt that weight lift a little. The days turned into weeks. Crops grew taller. Animals grew healthier. Myra's hands grew strong and skilled. She discovered not only how to work the soil but how to see the hidden ties between all living things. The farm was no longer Devon's alone. It had become hers as well. And deep inside she began to sense that the land was teaching her something greater. It was showing her that life was not only in what one could give by birth. Life was also in what one chose to create. The farm had begun to change under Myra's hands. The crops grew taller, and the soil gave more each week. Devon noticed the difference in the color of the leaves and the strength of the stems. The animals grew healthier, and even the air around the farm seemed more alive. For Myra, every day felt like proof that she could still build and create, even if her people had once judged her as empty. But news did not stay quiet for long. Travelers passed through the nearby village and carried stories back to the city. They spoke of a sterile Zelian who worked beside a human farmer, who grew food enough for many, and who smiled with pride in her work. At first the stories were told with laughter, as if mocking a strange tale. Then the council of Zelians heard. For them, the thought was dangerous. A sterile one was not meant to thrive. If others began to believe that value came from more than bearing children, then the laws of the council would be questioned. One morning Myra was carrying baskets of grain to the shed when she saw dust rising on the horizon. Devon came out of the barn and narrowed his eyes. "Visitors," he said in a calm but sharp tone. Soon 3 riders arrived at the edge of the farm. Their mounts were tall, with silver scales that glimmered in the sun. Each rider wore the long robes of the Zelian council guard. Their faces were hard, and their eyes carried the cold judgment of the law. The leader dismounted and stepped forward. His voice rang clear. "Myra of the Zelian race. You were sold at the city auction. You were marked as sterile and given away. Yet we hear you live here as if equal to one who claimed you. This breaks custom. Myra felt her heart pound, but she stood tall. Devon placed himself beside her, his arms crossed but his voice steady. She works with me. She is free here. Your customs have no rule on my land. The guard's eyes narrowed. A sterile one cannot live outside her place. She cannot be teacher, she cannot be partner, she cannot stand as equal. She was meant to serve only until her end. Myra took a deep breath. She looked at the fields behind her, green and full of life. Then she turned back to the guards. I was told I was empty. But look at the land. I planted, I cared, and it gives food for many. I am not empty. I give life in a way my people never wished to see. The guards glanced at one another. Their expressions flickered with doubt, but the leader spoke again with harshness. You may grow crops, but that does not change the law. The council will hear of this. If you continue, there will be punishment. Devon stepped closer, his voice low but strong. Then let them come. I will not let them take her. She is free here, and this land answers to no council. The guards mounted their beasts once more. The leader gave a final look, filled with both anger and unease. Prepare yourself. The council will not let this insult pass. With that they turned and rode back toward the city, leaving a trail of dust behind them. Myra's hands shook as she set down the basket she had been holding. They will return, she said quietly. Devon placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Yes, they will. But remember this. You are not alone now. Whatever comes, we will face it together. The days that followed carried a heavy silence. Myra worked the fields, but her mind often wandered to the threat. She remembered the cold eyes of the guards and the sharp tone of their words. Yet each time she touched the soil, she felt strength return. The plants did not judge her. The earth did not measure her worth by what she lacked. Here she found peace, even as fear pressed at the edges of her mind. The villagers from nearby settlements began to visit. They brought baskets and jars to trade for the food Myra and Devon grew. Some came out of curiosity, wanting to see the woman the council had rejected. They watched as Myra taught children how to plant seeds, how to water carefully, and how to care for soil so it would not break. One elder from the village said softly, "She teaches better than our own. The council may say she is useless, but here she gives more than many fertile ones ever have." The words spread. Whispers became stories. Stories became questions. Why should a being be judged only by birth when they could build so much with their hands and mind? The more Myra worked, the more the idea grew among the people. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, Myra sat by the fire with Devon. The flames cast soft light on their faces. "I am afraid," she admitted. "The council has power. They will not forgive me for defying their law." Devon looked into the fire and answered simply. "Power is not always in the hands of those who rule. Sometimes it is in the soil, sometimes in the people who see truth. You are changing how they think, whether the council wants it or not." Myra listened and felt a spark inside her heart. The council might come with threats, but she knew she could not go back to being silent. She had found her place in the soil, in the work, in the life she built with Devon. And even if the council tried to silence her, she was no longer the woman who had stood in chains on an auction stage. She was more. The threat from the council did not vanish from Myra's mind, but life on the farm carried on. The sun rose, the crops needed water, and the animals needed care. Devon believed that the best answer to fear was steady work, and Myra followed that belief. With each day she found herself more tied to the land and more tied to the people around her. The nearby village began to change in how it looked at her. At first the villagers had been curious but distant. They whispered when she passed, and some avoided her eyes. Yet as the weeks turned to months, the food from the farm spoke louder than any rumor. Grain sacks from Devon's fields filled their storehouses. Vegetables grown by Myra's care brought color to their tables. Slowly the villagers began to greet her with warmth instead of doubt. Children came most often. They ran across the fields in small groups, laughing as they chased one another. Myra welcomed them. She showed them how to press seeds into soil and how to cover them with care. She explained that plants were like friends, needing water, sunlight, and patience. The children listened wide-eyed, and soon they returned again and again. Some even brought their parents, who stood quietly watching as Myra taught. One afternoon a storm swept across the land. Winds tore at roofs, and rain fell in heavy sheets. The village animals broke free from their pens and scattered in panic. Myra ran into the storm without fear. She caught young animals in her arms, guided larger ones back with ropes, and built makeshift shelters with whatever she could find. Devon joined her, but it was Myra's calm voice and steady hands that saved many lives that night. When the storm passed, the villagers gathered to thank her. An elder placed his hand on hers and said, "You have given us more than food. You have given us care. That is life too." The words stayed with Myra. They reminded her that value did not come only from giving birth. Value came from giving kindness, strength, and hope. Devon also saw the change in her. At night, when the work was done, they sat together by the fire. He spoke little, but his eyes carried respect. Myra felt comfort in his presence. Their bond was not born of duty or law but of shared work and trust. As the seasons passed, Myra found herself becoming part of the rhythm of the community. She was asked to speak at gatherings where villagers shared knowledge. She explained how to mix certain herbs to keep crops safe from insects. She showed how to rotate planting so the soil would stay strong. Many listened, and her advice was followed. Slowly the people began to see her not as a sterile outcast but as a teacher. Yet she also felt the shadow of the council still watching. Traders passing through the village spoke of new discussions in the city. Some said the council grew angry that a sterile one was gaining respect. Others whispered that spies had been sent to watch her. Myra knew that her path would not remain free of conflict. Still she did not let fear stop her. Each day she woke with purpose. Each seed she planted was proof that life could be built in more than one way. Each child's smile was a reminder that her worth was real. One evening, as the sky turned red with sunset, Myra sat by the fields with Devon. The air was filled with the smell of ripening grain. She turned to him and said softly, "When I was in the city, I thought my story had ended. They told me I was nothing. But here I see I can be more." Devon gave a small nod. The city measures wrong. They think value is only one thing. But life shows many paths. You found yours. Her eyes lifted to the horizon. And yet the council will not allow it. They will return. Yes, Devon agreed. But remember this. You are not alone now. You have the farm, you have me, and you have the people who see what you give. Together we are stronger than their law. Myra felt the truth in his words. She had once stood alone in chains, judged by cold eyes. Now she stood among fields, children, animals, and a partner who believed in her. The bonds she had built were not of blood but of choice and care. That night the villagers lit lanterns in the square to thank Myra and Devon for their help during the storm. Music filled the air, and laughter echoed under the stars. Myra stood among them, her heart full. For the first time in her life she felt part of a family, not one made by birth but one made by love and respect. And as the lanterns rose into the night sky, Myra made a quiet promise to herself. No matter what the council tried to take from her, they could not take this bond. They could not take the life she had built with her own hands. The council's warning did not fade. Weeks after the storm and the village celebration, a message arrived from the city. It was carried by a messenger on a swift-winged mount, and its words were clear. Myra was summoned. The council wished to judge her usefulness. They had decided on a contest. Her life and work would be compared to a fertile Zelian, and only the result would determine if she could continue to live freely. Myra read the message carefully. She felt a wave of fear, but also a spark of determination. She looked to Devon, who had been standing quietly beside her. "We face them together," he said. "Whatever they decide, we show them what life truly means." The next days were filled with preparation. Myra gathered the villagers, explaining that the trial would require focus, planning, and care. They helped her reinforce the fields, strengthen the fences, and check every crop for health. Animals were cleaned and tended. Every seed, every plant, every creature became part of the effort. Myra wanted to show the council that her care could rival anything born from fertility alone. When the day of the trial arrived, the council sent their officials to oversee. Myra stood at the edge of her fields, her hands rough and strong from work. The fertile Zelian assigned to compete with her appeared beside her, carrying the expectation of generations. He smiled politely but with an air of confidence. He had been trained for this, praised for his ability to bring life into the world. The trial began. The council declared the rules. They would observe the growth, care, and yield of her work over a set period. Myra had to manage her crops and animals while ensuring everything thrived. She was not allowed to use magic or tricks forbidden by the laws. Only her skill, her care, and her effort would count. Myra took a deep breath and began. Devon stood at her side, carrying water and tools. Together, they checked each plant, strengthened each fence, and worked with the animals. Myra guided young villagers to help, showing them how to tend the soil and move the animals with gentle hands. Every day she rose early and worked until the sun set, her body aching but her spirit steady. As the days passed, the council's observers walked through her fields. They watched how she repaired fences for goats and sheep, how she planted new seeds and rotated older ones. They noted how she built small shelters for animals to protect them from sun and rain. They whispered to one another, clearly impressed by her knowledge and skill. The fertile Zelian worked as well. His tasks were different, focused on tending to his offspring and preparing the young for life. He had natural advantages, and he performed well. Yet as the trial continued, the contrast became clear. Myra did not produce children, but she produced life of another kind. She built the land into a place that nurtured plants, animals, and even the villagers who watched her work. One morning, Devon brought her a basket of vegetables from a distant plot. "Look," he said quietly. "This part of the field is thriving better than before. Your care has made it grow stronger." Myra smiled. For weeks, she had worried that her efforts would not measure up. Now she saw the evidence. Rows of green stretched across the farm, the crops bending gently under the sun. Chickens pecked happily in the yard. Goats nibbled grass in the shade. The farm was alive with energy. The final day arrived. The council gathered to observe the results. They walked slowly across the fields, touching plants and speaking softly to one another. Myra stood tall, holding her hands together but keeping her eyes on the work she had completed. The fertile Zelian section of land was neat, but it lacked the richness and abundance Myra had grown. Her crops were full, her animals healthy, and the village helpers beaming with pride in what they had learned. One council member spoke loudly. "Remarkable. We see skill and dedication beyond expectation." Another added, "Her work rivals life itself, even without the gift of bearing children." Myra felt her chest tighten. For the first time, the council seemed to recognize that her worth was not measured by fertility. She had proven, through sweat, care, and intelligence, that life could be created in many ways. Devon squeezed her shoulder. "You showed them," he said softly. The head of the council turned to the observers and declared, "This trial has revealed truth. Contribution is not only measured by birth. Skill, care, and dedication are equally valuable. Myra may continue her life as she chooses." Relief and joy surged through Myra. She looked at the fields, at Devon, and at the villagers who had come to support her. Her heart was full. She had faced the greatest authority in her world and shown that value is not a single path but many. That evening, the farm glowed with light from fires and lanterns. Myra walked through the rows of crops, touching leaves, checking the soil, and smiling. The council's challenge had tested her, but it had also revealed her strength, her knowledge, and the love she had poured into the land. She knew that the journey was not over, but for the first time, she felt truly free. She had faced judgment and emerged not only alive but respected. And in the quiet of the farm, she felt the deep satisfaction of a life built by choice, skill, and care. The sun rose slowly over the fields, casting golden light on the crops Myra had nurtured. The air was warm and sweet with the scent of ripening grain and fresh vegetables. Birds sang from the trees, and the animals wandered freely, calm and content. Myra walked among them, her hands brushing the tops of tall stalks, feeling the life she had helped create. The council's challenge had ended. Their judgment was clear: she had proven that her worth was not limited by the inability to bear children. Myra had faced the authority of her people and shown that contribution comes in many forms. Her farm was full of life, her animals were strong, and the villagers had learned skills that would carry them through many seasons. The village gathered in the center of the farm that morning. Children carried baskets of food they had helped grow. Elders stood with smiles, and families brought lanterns to light the celebration. Devon stood beside Myra, his hands folded quietly, his eyes reflecting pride. They had worked together for months, but this day was hers. Myra stepped forward. She looked at the crowd and spoke with calm confidence. "I was once judged for what I could not do. My people said I had no value. But life is not only in what one can give by birth. Life is in the work we do, in the care we give, and in the kindness we show. Every plant, every animal, every person I help grow is part of my life. I am grateful that I could show this truth." The villagers cheered softly, some clapping, others nodding with respect. They had seen the change she had made. They had seen her patience and her strength. And now they understood that a being's worth was not a single measure, but many. The council's representatives arrived to witness the final harvest. They walked carefully through the fields, examining the crops and the animals. Their faces, once stern, softened as they saw the abundance Myra had created. The produce was vibrant, full of life, and the animals were healthy and calm. They turned to one another and spoke in quiet tones, impressed by the evidence before them. The head of the council raised his hand. We have seen proof. A being's value is not only in the ability to bear children. Myra has shown skill, care, and dedication beyond measure. She is to be honored for her contribution. Let this day mark a new understanding. All beings have worth beyond reproduction. Myra felt a lightness in her chest. Her heart swelled with joy, not only for herself but for all who had been judged by impossible standards. She looked at Devon, who gave a small nod and smile, and she knew he shared in her triumph. The villagers brought gifts of grain, baskets of fruit, and hand-woven cloth. Myra accepted them with gratitude but also shared her own. She gave seeds she had saved, small animals she had raised, and tools she had made. She wanted others to carry forward what she had learned. Life, she realized, was strongest when shared. As the sun climbed higher, the festival began. Children ran across the fields, laughing as they played games with animals. Families cooked meals together, and the air was filled with the smells of fresh bread and roasted vegetables. Myra moved through the crowd, smiling at each person. She had once feared her life was empty. Now it was full beyond measure. That evening, Myra and Devon sat by the fire outside the farmhouse. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the stars slowly appeared overhead. Myra leaned against Devon and spoke softly. I never imagined life could feel like this. I feared being useless, but now I see that life is in what we create, what we care for, and the love we give. Devon nodded. You have changed not only the farm but the people around it. You have shown them a new way to see value. That is a gift no one can take away. Myra smiled, her heart full. The farm was alive, the villagers were thriving, and she had found her place. Her journey from the auction hall to this moment had been difficult, but every step had taught her strength, patience, and hope. The council's decree became known throughout the Xelian lands. Stories spread of the sterile Xelian who had built life with her hands, mind, and heart. Others who had been judged for their limitations found courage. Myra's life became an example that contribution comes in many forms, and that a chance taken with trust and care could change everything. In the days that followed, the farm continued to grow. Myra and Devon worked together, planting, tending, and guiding the next generation of villagers in the ways of the land. The fields were green, the animals happy, and the people learned that life was more than a single expectation. Myra looked across the farm one morning, the sun warming her face, and thought of the auction hall where her life had been offered as useless. She smiled softly. She had been given a chance, and she had turned it into more than anyone could have imagined. She was honored as a farmer, a teacher, and a guide. And in the quiet of the farm, with the soil under her hands and the sky above, Myra knew that life is not measured only by what one is given, but by what one chooses to create. The land, the people, and the life she had built stood as proof. She had triumphed, and a new tradition had begun.